The day I got my husband's diagnosis, he suddenly installed a surveillance camera in the master bedroom. That night, I saw him swearing over the phone, "I'll never touch her again. I've sent you the account and password, you can log in anytime to check. I've decided to stay celibate for love." Watching his flushed, impassioned face, I silently fed his diagnosis report into the shredder. Stay celibate for love. Fine. Then stay celibate forever. Chapter 1. When the letters ALS appeared on Patrick's medical report, I nearly lost my footing. 3 months ago, Patrick was injured in a mountaineering accident while he was hospitalized. I specifically asked the doctors to run a full checkup, just to ease my mind. Never did I expect to receive such results. There's currently no cure for ALS. Medication can only slow the progression, but the outcome is irreversible. The doctor looked at me with sympathetic eyes. Patrick was only in his early 30s, handsome, capable, and successful. As a nationally renowned divorce lawyer, he was sharp, decisive, calm, and rational, a top-tier elite. In private, he lived a disciplined and minimal lifestyle, loved working out and hiking, and had exacting standards for his quality of life. The thought that someone like him would one day become a completely dependent ALS patient was unbearable. I sat by the street, watching the ceaseless crowd. After a long while, I slowly stood up. I had made up my mind. As husband and wife, we should face everything together, no matter how he might change in the future. I would stand by him with our son. By the time I got home, night had fallen. Our son Angelo was quietly playing Go in his room. At just 7 years old, he had already reached 5th Dan and had even been interviewed as a child prodigy on television. "Have you eaten?" I adjusted my emotions and asked gently. "Yes." The nanny made pork rib and lotus root soup. He didn't look at me, his eyes fixed on the board. "Where's your dad?" "Went out for a run." Angelo had a calm personality and spoke in short, clear sentences, just like the two of us. 2 hours later, I was leaning against the bed, hesitating whether to tell Patrick about the diagnosis when he returned. Dressed in black athletic wear, he looked energetic, sharp, and composed. I grew a bit anxious. "It's freezing outside, why are you dressed so lightly?" One of the doctor's warnings was that ALS patients lose muscle mass and generate less body heat. Catching cold could accelerate the progression. Patrick's face was expressionless. He said flatly, "That's how it is when you run." He then opened a box in his hands, took out a surveillance camera, and began adjusting it on the dresser, facing the bed directly. I was puzzled. "Why are you suddenly installing a camera? There have been some thefts nearby. Having a camera is safer. Aren't you worried about privacy leaks?" I asked hesitantly. After all, Patrick was someone who fiercely guarded his privacy. He glanced at me and sneered. "Privacy? Who would be interested in yours?" Emotions tangled inside me, but I didn't want to argue. When we went to bed, he lay down with his back to me, far away, clearly not in the mood to talk. I sighed inwardly. He had just finished a high-profile celebrity divorce case. Now that the pressure was off, I figured I'd let him relax a bit. In the middle of the night, I woke suddenly, uneasy. The space beside me was empty, Patrick was gone. Panic rose. I got up to look for him. On the balcony, he stood in his thin pajamas, talking on the phone in the chilly night breeze. I quickly grabbed a coat and walked over. "I won't touch her again." His hushed voice floated over, and I froze in my steps. "I've sent you the account and password. You can log in to check anytime. I've decided to stay celibate for love." Through the glass, I stared blankly at Patrick. On his usually cold and stoic face, there surged an unusually intense emotion. Looking at his passionate, flushed expression, I slowly pieced together the logic behind his words. For a moment, I felt like I no longer recognized the man before me. Chapter 2. Patrick had a high sex drive, disciplined and restrained during the day. He became demanding at night. In recent years, the mounting pressure in his life forced him to be meticulous and guarded in everything he said and did, increasingly turning himself into a closed-off man. Only during those tender, intimate nights, when he would pant breathlessly in my ear, caught in desire, could I catch a glimpse of the young man who once blushed at the sight of me. We were classmates in a graduate-level course. He was the one who pursued me, a cold and proud guy, but his eyes burned and his voice trembled only for me. I fell fast. Later, I stayed at the university as a professor, teaching psychology. He started out as a salaried lawyer and worked his way up to become a partner, eventually becoming a nationally recognized divorce attorney earning tens of millions annually. In terms of personality, we shared a lot. Emotionally stable, rational and pragmatic, calm and objective. We valued a quality life and were both willing to work hard for our ideals. My job was stable and respectable. I could balance both family and children. He had a booming career, soaring to the top of his field. Married for 8 years, we treated each other with respect, supported each other's growth, lived in a luxury condo worth tens of millions, and had a well-behaved son often called a child prodigy. You could say we had the kind of family everyone envied. But things started to change 6 months ago. He had always been in the habit of jogging at night. Previously, he would leave at 8 p.m., return by 9 p.m., and then spend half an hour with the family. Rain or shine, this routine never wavered. But 6 months ago, he suddenly started leaving at 7 and wouldn't come back until 10. He seemed exhausted when he returned and would go straight to bed after a shower. Naturally, the family time disappeared. I asked him why his jogs had gotten longer. He pressed his lips together and replied in a flat voice, "I'm stuck on a case. Staying out helps me clear my mind. Mental labor can be more draining than physical work." I understood. Later, he suddenly seemed to lose all interest in sex. I assumed it was due to stress affecting his body, worried about hurting his pride. I didn't bring it up, but I was genuinely concerned. That's why, after he was injured and hospitalized, I strongly urged him to take time off work and focus on recovery, and I asked the doctor to run a full health check. But now, it seems things weren't as I imagined. I lay back in bed, eyes wide open in the dark, staring silently at the ceiling. His words just now made him feel unfamiliar, and the look on his face felt even more unreal. So much so that, even after suffering 2 major shocks today, my overwhelming curiosity had somehow suppressed what should have been heartbreak and rage. I was genuinely curious. Just what kind of woman was on the other end of that call, someone who could turn the cool-headed, hyper-rational Patrick of recent years into that? I've always been a direct person. The next night, I slipped sleeping pills into his milk. Chapter 3. He was in a deep sleep. I took his phone and unlocked it using his fingerprint. I found the number from last night's call. Staring at it for a long time, something in my brain suddenly clicked. I had seen this number before, 3 months ago, after Patrick fell during a mountain climb and was hospitalized. I had asked the police for the contact information of the person who had first called for help. I wanted to express my gratitude. The number they gave me was this one. I have an excellent memory, especially for numbers. No mistake. I called the number in front of the police. A woman picked up. Her voice was gentle and kind, but it sounded a bit older. She softly declined the idea of meeting or receiving thanks, saying it was simply what any decent person would do. After the call ended, the police smiled and told me that while others might have asked for a reward, she definitely wouldn't. I asked why. The officer said he recognized her during the interview. She had once been featured in the news as a remarkably strong and beautiful woman. She's had a tough life. On her wedding day, her husband suddenly suffered a brain hemorrhage and was left completely paralyzed. He had a 7-year-old son from his previous marriage. She didn't abandon them. She cared for the man, changing bedpans, cleaning up after him, for 13 years, and raised the boy by herself. The man passed away last year. She finally got through it all. Now she runs a little food stand by the entrance to the countryside park, selling lamb offal soup. A person with that kind of moral character would never accept a thank you payment. I nodded at the time, feeling genuinely moved. My husband was lucky to have run into her. Now, in the stillness of night, I held his phone in silence for a long time, then opened the photo album. I wasn't sure whether Patrick was too confident or simply trusted me too much, but he had made little effort to hide anything. The screen filled with photos of a woman, the same woman, under a starry night sky. A small food stand glowed warmly with yellow lights and steam. The woman had gentle eyes and a bright smile. In some pictures she was slicing food, in others ladling soup, or chatting with customers. Every image radiated warmth, evoking a peaceful, storybook kind of life. Across hundreds of photos, Her outfit changed from short-sleeve summer dresses to thick winter coats. The photos spanned 6 months. On the third day, I went to the countryside park and sat down in front of the food stand labeled Sophia's lamb soup. I looked at the woman in the distance, Sophia. She was squatting beside a flower bed, speaking softly to a stray kitten. 2 men stood in front of the stand, joking. Sophia only has eyes for stray cats and dogs. Doesn't even care about making money. Sophia stood up quickly and replied with a gentle, apologetic tone. Sorry. I just felt so bad for them. I got too caught up and didn't notice you. One of the men waved it off. You're doing a good deed. These strays treat this place like home. They know you're soft-hearted and always sneak over for food. It's such a heartwarming sight. Makes us feel good just watching. After the 2 men left, I walked over. 1 bowl of lamb offal soup. Sophia smiled brightly and replied, coming right up. Through the billowing white steam, I quietly studied her, around 35 or 36. With faint lines at the corners of her eyes. She didn't have the youthful charm of a young girl, but her features were soft and serene. Her hair was casually tied back in a low ponytail. With wisps falling loosely, there was a kind of feminine grace unique to grown women. Sis, it's your first time here. I'll give you a few extra pieces of lamb lung to try. I sat at the small table and slowly savored the flavor. One question kept circling in my mind. Someone like Sophia, with her life story, her character, her values, would she really be the kind of person to get involved in another woman's marriage? Would she? Chapter 4. My gaze shifted, and Sophia was suddenly sitting in front of me. I froze for a moment. She gave a gentle smile, her eyes bright as she looked at me. You're Attorney Han's wife, aren't you? I put down my spoon and looked at her quietly. So you recognize me? She chuckled softly. I've got a good memory. I saw you once on Attorney Han's phone. So I recognized you. I frowned slightly, then it came back to me. Patrick used to have a lock screen photo of me and our son. It wasn't until 6 months ago that he suddenly changed it to a landscape. Sophia lowered her eyes, stayed silent for a few seconds, then spoke in a calm voice. I know why you're here. You probably think there's something going on between Attorney Han and me, right? I said nothing. She slowly lifted her gaze, her expression warm and sincere. Sis, if you trust me, I swear, there's nothing improper between me and Attorney Han. The only interaction we've had is that after his night runs, he sometimes stops by for a bowl of soup. At this, a trace of concern appeared between her brows. Later, I noticed he often seemed emotionally low while drinking the soup. He wouldn't talk to anyone. Looked extremely stressed. I offered a few kind words to comfort him. I never thought. Sigh. He must have misunderstood. He started saying all kinds of nonsense. Honestly, I found it ridiculous. Let's not even mention he's a married man, even if he were single. Someone of his level. How could he possibly fall for someone like me? I told him it was a moment of impulse, but he wouldn't listen. He became more and more outrageous. Sometimes he'd call me and say the most absurd things, even when I didn't want to hear them. The truth is, I'd been planning to talk to you too. Attorney Han must be under enormous pressure to act so irrationally. As his wife, maybe you could help him more. I stared at the thin film of white oil slowly solidifying on the surface of the soup. So what you're saying is, this was all one-sided on Patrick's part. And you've been refusing and advising him the entire time? Sophia let out a faint sigh and slowly nodded. I looked up at her and asked calmly, and installing a surveillance camera in my master bedroom for you to watch, was that also one of Patrick's impulsive acts against your will? Sophia stiffened for a second before quickly replying. I already scolded him for that. It was absolutely outrageous. I continued, and the time you went hiking together? When he carried you because you said your foot hurt and ended up falling off the mountain, was that also something he dragged you into against your will? Sophia's pupils widened. She shot to her feet. Hiking? I don't know what you're talking about. I looked at her coldly. Didn't you say you had a good memory? I called you that day to thank you. Remember? Forgotten so soon? Just then, a customer shouted, "Large order to go." Sophia pressed her lips together and hurried to the stall, her movements stiff as she picked up a large ladle to serve the soup. Clang! A loud crash rang out as the pot of hot lamb offal soup overturned, spilling steaming broth and ingredients all over the ground. The boiling soup splashed onto her, and Sophia let out a sharp cry. Ah! Her eyes instantly welled with tears. The customer cursed, "Fuck," as he dodged the spill, grumbling that he was unlucky, and stormed off cursing. Looking at the mess in front of me, I didn't want to get involved any further. I picked up my bag and prepared to leave. Her eyes red. Sophia suddenly called out, "I'm sorry." I stopped and frowned at her. She stood there miserably, sobbing softly. "I'm sorry. I did hide that part from you. That day, I was feeling down because of an incident with my stepson. Patrick happened to show up and said a hike might help clear my mind. So I went. After he fell off the mountain, I was terrified. I called 110 and didn't dare face you. I was afraid you'd get the wrong idea." Her eyes were red, tears streaming down her cheeks. Her hands, burned by the hot soup, were covered in large blisters. She looked utterly pitiful. "Sandra, what are you doing?" A harsh shout rang out behind me. I turned. Patrick was rushing over, his face full of fury. In that moment, I was stunned. It had been so long since I'd seen such raw emotion on his face. He was wearing the blue suit he only wore for formal negotiations, which meant he had rushed here straight from an important work engagement. And once, even when I was in a car accident and called him, he insisted on finishing the negotiation before heading to the hospital. Patrick's eyes were wide with rage as he glanced at the spilled soup on the ground, then at the woman sobbing quietly. Tightening his lips, he strode over to Sophia step by step. He looked down at the woman in distress, then suddenly pulled her into his arms. "Are you okay? Did she hurt you?" Sophia buried her face in his chest and suddenly broke into loud sobs, cries of deep, helpless grievance. Patrick shut his eyes in pain, then gently whispered, "Don't cry, Sophia, don't cry. Remember your favorite saying? A light boat has sailed past 10,000 mountains. Your suffering is behind you, all of it. There's nothing left in this world that's worth Sophia shedding even a single tear." From beginning to end, Patrick never once looked at me. Chapter 5. I pulled out my phone and took several pictures of them in rapid succession. The sharp click-click of the shutter cut through the air. Sophia instantly stepped out of Patrick's embrace, backing away a few steps, her face filled with regret and panic. As if only just realizing what she had done, she looked at me in a panic, rambling an explanation. "I forgot, I didn't mean to, She couldn't finish, because I was simply looking at her coldly. "You don't need to say a word. I'll speak." Patrick interrupted her in a deep voice, turning toward me. In an instant, he had reverted to his usual composure, calm, sharp-eyed, and carrying the aura of a top-tier lawyer. "Sandra, whatever you have to say it at home. This park is very close to your university. Lots of students pass through here. Making a scene here would only embarrass you. And besides," he glanced at the mess on the ground, "what's the point of bullying a woman who's all alone in the world?" I looked at him coolly, my voice even. "Oh, so you do know that many of my students come through here. Then as my husband, isn't it pretty exciting for you to be clinging to a widow like kindling catching fire right here?" Patrick's eyes narrowed slightly, a flicker of anger mixed with surprise. After all, I had always been gentle, graceful, and poised in front of him. He had never seen the side of me. Even I had never seen the side of me. Honestly, I'd be fully justified slapping both of you right now. But I'm not going to let someone else's mess get pinned on me. I turned to Sophia, who was quietly cleaning up the mess. "So you're not saying anything, what? Are you actually thinking of going along with this version of the story?" She trembled slightly, and after a few seconds, slowly lifted her chin and spoke loudly. "Enough. Stop fighting. It wasn't her, I was the one who spilled the pot. Is that good enough?" Her eyes were red as she looked at Patrick, full of wounded frustration. "Attorney Hahn, please take your wife and leave. You're affecting my business. I won't be serving you anymore. Don't come back." Customers had begun arriving one after another. What happened? How did things end up like this? "Sophia, is someone bothering you? Who is it? If anyone dares mess with Sophia, I won't stand for it." One hostile gaze after another landed on me. Patrick's eyes darkened. He grabbed my hand and started walking toward the parking lot. I couldn't break free, so I had to follow his lead. Ahead, a familiar student came jogging up with a ball in his hands, smiling as he greeted me. "Hi, Professor Sandra." I smiled politely and nodded. "Hello." Chapter 6. Once we reached the parking lot, I forcefully shook off his hand and calmly walked toward my own car. The trees on both sides blurred past as I drove down the main road. And finally, the tears that had been holding back began to fall. I gave myself 30 minutes. Anger, pain, acceptance, calm. Then, I turned the steering wheel and drove to the bank. Patrick and I shared a joint household account. Both our salaries, bonuses, and investment returns had always been pooled into it. When we first opened the account, he had smiled and said, "You always complain that I'm not expressive enough. Well, from now on, this account is yours to manage. I'll just keep depositing money into it. Think of it as security for you and our son." Is that kind of expression satisfactory? Over the years, the balance had grown to more than 18 million yuan. But the bank staff looked at me with confusion. "This account has been frozen due to a guarantee default." "You didn't know?" My hands and feet turned cold. I asked slowly, "When did this happen?" 2 months ago. 2 months ago. That was right after he recovered and was discharged from the hospital. At the time, I had collapsed from exhaustion taking care of him, suffering a week-long high fever. And while I was burning up and disoriented in bed, he was already making moves to secure the upper hand in our future divorce and financial split. I found it both laughable and pathetic. On the way here, I had even regretted being too impulsive, laying all my cards on the table without planning an exit strategy first. Turns out, he had already started calculating against me long ago. When a man falls out of love, he can truly be cruel. By the time I returned home, night had fallen completely. Patrick was sitting on the sofa in his loungewear, sipping tea with his usual calm demeanor. He glanced at me. "I sent Angelo to my mother's. Let's have one conversation and get everything out in the open." I sat down and looked at him in silence. He took a sip of tea and spoke slowly. "I was originally planning to bring this up a bit later. I did feel some guilt, and I wanted you and our son to enjoy a little more happiness for as long as possible. But since you chose to make a scene today, I guess I'll go along with it. Sandra, I've fallen in love with someone else. Let's get a divorce." I was extremely calm, even offering him a faint smile. "Patrick, can you tell me, what exactly is it about her that made you choose to betray 10 years of love? To abandon your wife and child?" He frowned slightly. "If you insist on an answer." After a pause, he began in a soft and sentimental tone. "In my line of work, I've seen too much deception and manipulation in marriages. I lost all normal perception of love and relationships. But after meeting her, I realized there are still women like that in this world. Women who, purely out of love and responsibility, would give up the best years of their life without hesitation. She brought vitality to my heavy, suffocating, stagnant life." You asked what I love about her? I've asked myself that 1,000 times. Because she's gentle, kind, and strong. Because life gave her hardship, yet she bloomed in the mud. Because on every cold night, she handed me a bowl of hot soup. After that long speech, his face was full of emotion. He seemed even moved by his own words. The room fell into silence. After a while, I let out a soft tisk. "So the soup made by our housekeeper wasn't hot enough? You had to go out and taste something that reeked?" Patrick's eyes hardened, his face instantly turning cold. "Sandra, you're a refined egotist. You'll never understand this kind of feeling." I nodded. "Since that's the case, leave with nothing. I agree to divorce." A sneer appeared on his face. "First of all, there's no such thing as leaving with nothing under the law. And even if we entertain that idea, Sophia and I never had any physical relationship. Technically speaking, I'm not even the party at fault." I stared at him in silence. Could someone really change so completely? So heartless, like his soul had been swapped. Patrick seemed to guess what I was thinking and furrowed his brow slightly. "You don't need to be like this. If love's gone, divorce is the natural next step." When I was lying on that mountain, waiting for rescue, I figured it out. Life is short. I don't want to tiptoe around anymore, even if it means being cursed or judged. I want to take the risk and truly live for once. Sandra, don't forget what I do for a living. I have more than enough ways to deal with this. It's just a matter of whether I want to use them on you. I let out a low chuckle. Not use them on me? Haven't you already? Freezing the account in secret, what a filthy trick. Doesn't it insult your so-called noble, pure love? Patrick glanced at me and replied flatly, "Ah, So you did check the account. It's nothing, it's just standard procedure. I only did it to avoid complications during the divorce. I've already drafted the divorce agreement. The money and the kid go to me. The apartment's yours. Of course. But the rest of the mortgage is your responsibility, considering your contribution to the household finances. I've already been more than generous. Bang! I picked up the ashtray on the table and hurled it at him. He clutched his forehead. Bright red blood seeped through his fingers. Chapter 7. You're insane, Patrick shouted, both shocked and furious. Staring at the blood dripping steadily from his forehead, he grabbed his car keys and stormed out without looking back. I slowly sat down, picked up the teapot, and poured myself a cup of tea. In just 3 short days, my entire life had been turned upside down. After leaving the bank, I realized Patrick had finally started using the very tactics he had perfected over the years on me. Maybe I was just more unfortunate than most women. Not only was I betrayed emotionally, but my husband also happened to be a professional divorce lawyer. Over the years, he had trained himself to be ruthlessly logical, making every decision based on profit. If I kept drowning in useless pain and sadness, I'd be left with nothing, not even a proper place to fall. I had to deal with this the same way he would. So before coming home, I had already gone to my mother-in-law's house, picked up Angelo, and arranged for him to stay with a Go teacher we trusted. Silently, I drank cup after cup of tea, outside the window. At some point, a full moon had quietly risen into the sky. After a long while, I stood and walked into the bedroom, retrieving the diagnosis report. Just as I focused on it, my phone buzzed. Patrick had sent me a photo. In the image, his forehead was already bandaged, and he lay with his eyes closed, resting on a woman's lap. 2 hands, his and hers, tightly clasped together. Below was a line of text. Since you don't treasure him, I don't feel guilty anymore. It was your rejection that gave me the courage to say yes. This wasn't just an announcement, it was a blatant provocation. Someone who had clawed their way out of a ruined life, who had seen all the ugliest parts of the world, couldn't possibly be some lotus blooming in the mud. She had tipped that boiling pot on purpose this afternoon. She stopped me and apologized when I was about to leave, also on purpose, because she had already told Patrick to show up. Patrick could read profit like a hawk, but he was blind to the human heart. Men are so pathetic, I murmured. Then I fed the diagnosis report into the shredder. With the hum of zzz, my heart finally settled. Yes, I knew what I was up against. One was the noble, kind-hearted woman of the year. The other, a nationally renowned divorce lawyer. But I was ready to fight this war with him to the end. Divorce? Of course. But I will take the child. And the money. More importantly, I'll make sure this pair of pathetic star-crossed lovers stays bound together, so tightly that even death can't tear them apart. A light boat has passed through 10,000 mountains? Then I'll make sure the 2 of you suffer through 10,000 more. There's always another mountain higher than the last. Chapter 8. I refused Patrick's proposed divorce terms. As a professional divorce lawyer, the last thing he wanted was to go to court over his own divorce. It would signal he had failed at negotiation, that he couldn't handle his own case, and it would damage his professional reputation. I wasn't in a hurry anyway. Well, maybe not exactly not in a hurry, but certainly less so than they were. In Patrick's eyes, Sophia was radiant and pure. If she made any overt move before they were officially together, her saintly image would be stained, so she could only play the push-and-pull game, refusing on the surface, while subtly welcoming, and when necessary, she'd have to put on the face of moral high ground and kindness. As for Patrick, even more so, he wouldn't dare do anything during the sensitive stage of the divorce that could label him as the one at fault. So the 2 of them? They could only hold back. At most, he could sneak out during his night runs to have a bowl of lamb offal soup at Sophia's stand. Lamb offal soup. I cradled a steaming cup of tea and quietly enjoyed the drifting snowfall outside the window. The doctor had said ALS patients need to avoid the cold, and even more importantly, avoid high-purine foods, or it would accelerate the progression of the disease. And high-purine foods? Chief among them, animal organs. Patrick came back after staying at the office for a week. When he entered, I was sorting through clutter. There was a bandage on his forehead. His face was icy, and he said nothing as he went straight to the bedroom. Soon, he came out with a suitcase. Then, eyeing me coldly, He spoke. I was going to leave you the house, but after everything you've done to destroy what we had, we'll have to go by the book. The bank account's frozen, and our only significant shared asset is this apartment. So, are you going to sell the place and give me half, or pay me my share in cash? I tossed a photo album into a cardboard box and let out a laugh. What? Sophia got her eye on the apartment now? Patrick sneered. You think everyone's like you, only caring about money? Sophia's never once brought up money, not a single word. Don't insult her. His eyes caught something. He frowned, walked over, and picked up the album from the box. What are you doing? Throwing away trash. You. His face darkened with anger, then froze. He knew this album well. It held all the photos of us from our university days, from the first candid shots he took of me, to our first meetings, to when we fell in love. I used to treasure it like gold, keeping it in a safe, saying it was something we'd look back on when we were old. Now, with a blank expression, I took it from his hands and casually tossed it away. A dull thud echoed in the quiet room. Still here? Isn't it about time for your night run? I reminded him. His expression turned ugly. After a long silence, he turned to leave, flinging back a cold line. Hiding Angelo won't work. He's still my son. Being with me is the only way to secure his future. I will never give him up. Bang! The door slammed shut. Half an hour later, I stood, clapped the dust off my hands, and let out a long breath. Everything related to him had been packed up, just waiting to be dumped at the garbage station. So those once precious memories of youth? Turns out, it wasn't all that much after all. Just as I was sighing over it all, my phone rang. On the other end, a laid-back young man's voice came through. I'm Tito. You looking for me? Chapter 9. I looked at the young man sitting across from me, smacking on chewing gum with a cocky, nonchalant attitude, purple hair, lip ring, eyes cold and defiant, every bit the rebellious type. But if you looked closely, he was wearing a thin cotton jacket in the snowy weather, the sleeves frayed white from wear. The zipper had burst open and been messily stitched shut with black thread, clearly done by hand, probably his own. I got straight to the point. You're Tito? Sophia's stepson? He lazily lifted his eyelids and glanced at me without speaking. I pulled out a wad of cash and handed it to him. My husband wants a divorce because of her. I need your help. Deal. He swept the money up with one arm. No hesitation at all. His quick response surprised me. You don't even ask questions? You believe what I said? What's not to believe? He kept chewing, his tone casual. She raised you, didn't she? Pfft. Tito spit out the gum in an arc, his expression turning mocking. Rather than say she raised us, I'd say she enjoyed how it looked to the outside world. I studied him for a moment, then pulled out another wad of cash. He snatched it again, then continued. I started piano lessons at 4. My dad had saved up money for it. She donated it all to the Red Cross. When reporters came, she said, other kids don't even have food to eat. No matter how hard things are for us, it's nothing compared to them. You know how my dad died? Bed sores on his back got infected. Yeah, she took care of him, but only the parts people could see. You say your husband got fooled by her? Doesn't surprise me. Her saintly image always attracts a few suckers. But someone like him? First time I've seen that. Before he left, Tito held the money tightly in his hand and asked, so all I have to do is figure out how to make her force your husband into a divorce? That's it? I nodded. That's it. Cool. Just getting divorced wasn't enough. It had to happen my way. The next day, under soft, fluttering snow, I returned once more to Sophia's lamb soup. Sophia was kneeling in the snow, tying the shoe of an old man leaning on a cane. Nearby grannies and uncles all gave her a thumbs up. A man would have to have done 8 lifetimes of good to marry a daughter-in-law like you. Sophia stood and blushed. With someone like me? Who would even want me? She turned and locked eyes with me. Her face went pale. She pressed her lips together and walked up to me, raising her chin slightly. Attorney Han said, if you dare come looking for me again, or lay a hand on me, he'll sue you. I lowered my gaze. When I looked back up, I let rage twist my features. I spoke in a frenzied, trembling voice. Sophia, what the hell was that message you sent me? You two are together now? Aren't you afraid I'll blow this whole thing wide open? Ruin your reputation forever? Sophia squinted at me for a moment. Then she suddenly smiled, shaking her head with a soft sigh. I used to look at university professors and think they were so impressive, so admirable. Now that I'm closer, turns out, they're no different from any street-side shrew. She looked at me with gentleness and pity. The kind of heart you have determines the kind of world you see. Yes, I accepted him because he placed a burning, passionate heart right in front of me. No woman could ignore love that sincere. Attorney Han is an incredible man. He's under tremendous pressure, and yet he received no warmth from his home. You never knew how to cherish what you had. But I'm not as dirty-minded as you think. Yes. I said yes to him, but only with the condition that as long as he's still married, we would never cross that line. I'm just me. He comes, I'm here. He doesn't come, I'm still here. That's all. I snapped back. Don't think I don't know what you're after. You want his money. Otherwise, why would he fight me over the assets and the divorce? She smiled faintly, as if it wasn't even worth arguing. Everyone knows, money is the thing I care about least. If I wanted to marry rich, I had plenty of chances these past 13 years. The only thing that moves me is sincerity. I sneered coldly, full of contempt. Sincerity? If he loves you so much, why hasn't he rushed to divorce and marry you already? Sounds to me like he still values money more than he values you. The serene look on Sophia's face cracked for a moment. I know how sincere he is. That's enough. I smiled smugly. Sincerity? Then prove it. Let him walk out of the marriage with nothing. If he's willing to give up everything just to be with you, then I'll believe he truly loves you. Otherwise, it's all bullshit. Just excuses for a homewrecker and a hypocrite. Sophia's jaw tensed. She pressed her lips tightly together for a long time before finally meeting my eyes and saying each word clearly. What if he does? I boldly replied, without hesitation. Then I'll personally show up to your wedding with a grand gift. Let the whole world know, even his ex-wife was moved by your love. Your image, Sophia, will shine even brighter. As my words echoed with dramatic flair, a glimmer began to light up in Sophia's eyes. I knew it. Her endorphins and dopamine were starting to stir. Chapter 10. The city had been hit by several days of heavy snowstorms, causing widespread traffic disruptions. Sophia's food stand had temporarily closed. But when two people are in the throes of passion, how could a little weather stop them? Using his habit of drinking lamb offal soup as an excuse, Patrick braved the snow and cold every evening after work, walking half an hour to Sophia's house to have soup. In fact, the challenge of the weather and the distance only made their meetings feel more intense, more passionate. Patrick would sit at the dinner table, while Sophia busied herself just for him. They'd exchange glances and smile every so often, a scene so warm and tender it could have come straight out of a domestic bliss commercial. I saw all of this through a surveillance camera. A few days ago, Tito sent me a receipt. Reimbursement. I replied, for what? He sounded annoyed. I don't feel like updating you on their situation. I bought and installed a camera. You can watch it yourself. My dad's house, my rules. After a moment's thought, I agreed. Patrick was usually calculating and composed. Only when he was with Sophia did he seem to lose all sense. Like an old house catching fire, collapsing with ease. Know your enemy. Control the tempo. Besides, it was only poetic justice, fighting fire with fire. One day, just as the two were having a perfect moment, Patrick sipping soup, Sophia gazing at him with her chin resting in her palm, Tito returned home with a thunderous entrance. He frowned and suddenly said, "So you're the bastard." Huh? Both of them froze on the spot. Sophia rushed to explain gently. Patrick said, in a deep voice, that he was just a customer. Tito scoffed. Coming over every day in this freezing weather just for soup? What? You'll die if you skip a bowl? I thought the neighbors were making it up. But why panic? If you're together, just say so. What's so hard about admitting it? Just your usual man-woman business. He paused, giving Patrick a suspicious glance. Wait a minute, you're not one of those love-scamming gigolos, are you? Patrick's face darkened. I'm a lawyer. So, you're a married man? Patrick's face went pale. I just came for soup. Tito exploded. The fuck? You're cheating on your wife with my stepmom? Get the hell out of here. You already have a wife and now you're trying to seduce a widow? I swear I'll beat the crap out of you. He lunged as if to hit him. Sophia screamed and quickly tried to pull him back. The door was wide open. It was snowing heavily and everyone in the neighborhood was stuck indoors, bored. Naturally, a crowd of curious neighbors had gathered at the door. Voices started chiming in. Sophia, don't fall for it. These days, even scammers look decent. Remember that guy from a few years ago? Kept showing up pretending to be a donor. Then his wife showed up and raised hell. Don't get tricked again. Seeing the commotion, Sophia forced a smile and explained that Patrick was really just there for soup, and Tito had misunderstood. After this little scene, Patrick, worried about public opinion, stopped coming every day. Even when he did visit, he looked like he was sneaking around. The two of them, unable to see each other freely, became lovesick. Every meeting was full of longing. They could lock eyes and freeze in place for minutes. And me? I sent Patrick a new version of the divorce agreement. He simply replied with, "Not happening." One day, through the camera, I saw Sophia suddenly tell Patrick that she was leaving the city. Patrick was shocked. "Why are you leaving?" Sophia's eyes were red. "Tito's grown up now. It's not appropriate for us to keep living together. I don't have any family here. So I'll go back to my hometown. My aunt's introducing me to a widower. He's in his 50s. But given someone like me, it's all I can expect." "No!" Patrick suddenly burst out. "A man like that doesn't deserve you. You're not allowed to marry anyone else. You're going to marry me." Tears rolled down Sophia's cheeks. "You're a married man, Patrick. Sophia, will never be a homewrecker. Let's just accept that we weren't meant to be," Patrick said firmly. "Sophia, just wait for me. I'd never let you be the other woman. I will get a divorce. You don't understand. This is about securing a better deal. I can't rush it." Suddenly, Sophia stood up, choking back sobs and raising her voice. "Aren't you a divorce lawyer? Why can't you get divorced? Didn't you say you make $20 million a year? Why are you still clinging to money? I don't understand all your legal tricks. I just know, I don't want money. I just want a real, honest love. Is money more important to you than that? If so, leave. You don't deserve my love." Chapter 11. Patrick sent me a message. "You can have the house. I'm taking the money and our son." I replied, "I want everything. Don't be unreasonable. Then we'll drag this out." The next time Patrick appeared on the surveillance feed, it was at night. Sophia had just taken a shower, her damp hair hanging down, wearing a new nightgown that was slightly sheer under the warm lights of the heated room. She wore a cold expression, didn't speak a word to Patrick, but kept bending over and serving him soup and rice. Patrick's eyes were glued to her the entire time. At one point, he even tried to reach for her hand, but she yanked it away in alarm. "You think I'm that kind of woman, Attorney Hahn? This is the last time I'll make soup for you. I'm going back to my hometown next month for a blind date. Don't bother coming anymore." That night, Patrick sat silently in the living room for a long time. Eventually, he messaged me again. "You can have the house and the money, but I'm taking our son." I paused for a moment. Let him choose who he wants to be with. "Fine. You said it. No takebacks." Patrick's reply was confident. I gazed at the clear sky after the snow had stopped, my heart quietly tightening. Truthfully, I wasn't very confident when it came to Angelo. At 3, he had a photographic memory. By 5, he was studying Go. At 7, he was already being called a prodigy. He had always been different from other children, never threw tantrums, never clung to anyone, even though I handled everything from his meals to his daily routines. He had never shown particular attachment to me. I teach psychology, so I'd looked into case studies. Children like him, whose cognitive abilities were highly developed, often lagged behind in emotional needs and expression. To him, there wasn't much difference between me, Patrick, or even his nanny. After I placed him with the Go instructor, every time I went to visit, he would simply greet me politely, fully focused on the game board. The day Angelo had a tournament, I dropped him off at the venue before heading to my university. When I arrived later, Angelo had already won in record time and was being interviewed. I saw Patrick and my mother-in-law there. She was holding Angelo's hand, smiling ear to ear. Patrick, on the other hand, was confidently speaking in front of the camera. The case that had first made him famous was a celebrity divorce. His client had chosen him because she recognized him as the prodigy's father. Since then, Patrick had always acted as Angelo's spokesperson in interviews, and it brought him a steady stream of clients. After the interview, Patrick said something to my mother-in-law, then walked over to me. "Sandra, for the sake of our years together, I've already given up the house and the money. Of course, that amount means a lot to you, but to me, it's just 1 year's salary. Angelo will be much better off with me than with you." I clenched my jaw and forced a smile. "Did Angelo say he chose you?" He sneered and shifted slightly, letting me see Angelo and his grandmother getting into the car. "What do you think?" I froze, my nails nearly digging into my palm. Suddenly, the car door opened again. Angelo stepped out with his backpack, while my mother-in-law called after him in a panic. He walked over with the composure of a little adult, looked up at me, and said, "I just went to Dad's car to get my backpack." "Mom, you're late." I fought back the swell of emotion and slowly replied, "I know, I'm sorry I was late. I didn't expect you to finish so quickly, you were amazing." Patrick's face twisted in fury. He gritted his teeth. "Angelo, come with me. I've hired a national-level Go master to coach you." Angelo's voice was calm. "But aren't you getting divorced from Mom? Then I can't go with you and Grandma." Then he reached out and took my trembling hand. "Let's go. Mom, I need to get home. I have another match tomorrow." I tilted my head slightly and smiled. "All right, son." Patrick stood frozen, his face dark with disbelief. In the car, I restrained my shock and excitement. After a moment, I cautiously asked, "Angelo, do you really understand what it means when Mom and Dad get divorced?" From the back seat, Angelo answered in a steady, childlike voice, "I do. Are you sad?" My teacher says, never feel sad over the empty space lost on a Go board. My eyes welled with tears. I had always thought he didn't understand love or emotion. Turns out, I was wrong. Just because he didn't express it, didn't mean he didn't feel it. To someone with his level of mastery, he only placed his focus where it mattered most in the moment. When the environment favored him, he didn't overattach. But when it shifted, he could assess instantly and choose accordingly. My son, Angelo, a born strategist. Chapter 12. When Sophia once again wore a sheer nightgown and threw herself into his arms with tearful eyes, saying goodbye, Patrick finally lost control. Almost forcefully, aggressively, he tore apart the already barely there nightgown. He scooped up the limp, soft-ass water Sophia and carried her, step by step, into the bedroom. I exited the surveillance feed. Tito, of course, didn't let it go. He sent me a message. "Your husband's been in that room for over 24 hours. Want me to help you catch them in the act?" No need. Seriously? After all that, you don't even want to vent a little? You're really just gonna let this shameless couple fly off into the sunset? You don't get it. Them ending up together, that's exactly my revenge. 2 days later, Patrick and I went to the registry office and finalized our divorce. The house, the money, the child, all mine. He walked away with nothing, but looked radiant. Of course, after months of celibacy, that first indulgence must have felt like rain after a drought. As we stepped out of the registry office, he gave me a cold side glance. "Sandra, do you really think you've won? You probably don't know, next year, my firm's bringing in new partners and expanding. My bonuses will double. The money you fought so hard to win, not even a year's worth of my income." As for Angelo, sure, he's young and clueless now, but when he grows up, he'll know who can give him a better future. Think you can keep him then? Just as he finished that last line, his legs suddenly gave out and he fell flat on the pavement. Embarrassed, he scrambled to his feet, glancing down at his shoes in confusion. I looked at him calmly, then smiled. "Well, congratulations. That is, if you live long enough to enjoy it." He frowned, wanting to say something, but I turned around and walked away without looking back. Some time later, Tito, very much on purpose, barged into their love nest mid-passion, bringing a few rowdy friends with him. They snapped photos like paparazzi, shouted threats, and made a scene. Patrick, utterly humiliated, had no choice but to fork over his last 300,000 yuan in secret savings to shut them up. Sophia cried and demanded they get married immediately and make it a grand affair. Otherwise, she said, those thugs might start spreading wild rumors. In the end, Patrick pledged the firm's shares and took out a 5 million yuan loan, using part of it as a 20% down payment to buy Sophia a house, and the rest to fund a lavish wedding. Right before the wedding, Sophia messaged me, "Sister, does your word still count?" Her tone oozed sarcasm and smug satisfaction. I replied, "It does." On the day of the wedding, a news article suddenly went viral online. Headline: Famous divorce lawyer walks away with nothing, all for love. Comments poured in. OMG. This is unexpectedly romantic. I gave up my greatest skill, just to be with you. Isn't that the most beautiful and resilient woman from years ago? She finally made it through the hardship and found her happy ending. Exactly, she has morals and integrity. She divorced cleanly before starting something new. Nothing to criticize here. Still, kinda feel bad for the ex-wife. Bad? I'd kill to be her. She got the house, the money, and got rid of a man who didn't love her. What's not to like? No matter how you look at it. A professional divorce lawyer giving up what he does best, all for love? If that's not real love, what is? That day, during the climax of the wedding, Sophia stood on stage, her eyes glistening with tears, and emotionally declared, "A light boat has passed through 10,000 mountains." Thunderous applause erupted from the audience. All the guests offered their heartfelt blessings to the newlyweds, including me. Chapter 13. Half a year later, one day, while I was driving Angelo to the Go Academy, we got stuck in traffic near the hospital entrance where I spotted Patrick and Sophia. They were sitting on the edge of a flower bed along the roadside, holding medical report envelopes, both with dazed, vacant expressions. Suddenly, Sophia stood up and screamed, "The results are still the same. They didn't make a mistake. Why is my life so miserable?" After shouting, she ran off like a lost soul. Patrick didn't even lift his head. He sat frozen, staring blankly at the ground. Not long after, Tito appeared. He stormed over, grabbed Patrick by the collar, and swung a fist right into his face. Patrick collapsed helplessly to the ground, unable to put up any resistance. Tito roared, "Didn't you say 20,000 yuan a month? You owe me 2 months already. What, are you trying to make me leak those photos and videos or what?" Patrick slowly picked himself up, wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and said quietly, "I don't have any money left. I won't be paying anymore. Do whatever you want." Tito snapped, "No money? Aren't you some hotshot boss? Don't you get profit shares? Who the hell are you trying to fool?" Patrick tilted his head back and quietly looked up at the sky. "I'm sick, ALS. The moment my partners found out, they pulled their investments. The equity was barely enough to repay the 5 million loan. I can't work anymore. No income." Tito stared at him, stunned. "Not even a penny left?" Patrick let out a bitter laugh. "If I weren't sick, that kind of money would be nothing." But he didn't finish the sentence. A single tear slid from the corner of his eye. Suddenly, the rear car window rolled down. I turned my head. Angelo was looking out the window. He called out, "Dad." Patrick looked up and saw us. His body trembled. Then he lowered his head and choked out, "Angelo. Sandra. I'm sick. I really miss you both, Dad." "Your collar," Angelo continued. Patrick lifted his tear-streaked face, confused. "What?" "There's a lump of dog poop on it." And with that, Angelo pressed the window button and rolled the glass back up. Outside, Patrick's face, full of despair and helplessness, was the last thing we saw. Chapter 14. For a long time afterward, I deliberately avoided paying attention to anything about Patrick and Sophia. Once the gears of fate start turning, the ending is already set in motion. Until one day, Angelo and I had just finished eating a new dish our housekeeper had learned to make. We were sitting in the living room chatting, letting the food settle. I had changed my approach to Angelo's upbringing. Besides I wanted him to experience more of life. He paused for a moment, then asked me, "Mom, do you feel lonely?" I was caught off guard and almost laughed, but then slowly nodded. "Yes, I hope you can spend more time with me." He thought about it and agreed. From that day on, he no longer disappeared into his room right after dinner. Instead, he'd sit with me, talk, or watch a little TV. One night, Sophia's face suddenly appeared on the news, and I froze. She looked like a completely different person. Her face was haggard, her eyes weary, her cheekbones jutted out sharply, and her lips had thinned to a severe line. She was wiping away tears in front of a reporter. I've just had bad luck. One husband was paralyzed, and now this one has ALS. I hope society can show us a bit more compassion. The camera panned to a narrow bed in a shabby little room. A man lay silently, staring at the ceiling. It was Patrick, so thin he was nearly unrecognizable. The reporter spoke with passionate fervor. No matter what, MS. Sophia's resilience is worthy of our admiration. She and her husband came together for love. He gave up everything to be with her. And now, she refuses to abandon him in his time of need. Angelo kept his eyes fixed on the man on screen. Mom, I want to go see Dad. I agreed. 2 days later, when we arrived at the address from the TV broadcast, I was surprised. It was a dilapidated building, barely standing, worse than the place Sophia had lived in before. I held Angelo's hand as we climbed to the second floor. The door was wide open. No one was inside. The furniture was old and broken, and piles of junk were scattered everywhere. Just as I was beginning to wonder if we had the wrong place, a strange, gurgling sound came from the bed in the corner. Patrick's eyes were wide open, staring straight at us. I walked over with Angelo. His eyes immediately welled up. 2 murky tears streamed down his cheeks as he mumbled in a slurred voice. Son, son, son. I stared at him in silence. His eyes were sunken, his body reduced to skin and bone. The sharp, shrewd light that used to gleam in his eyes had turned murky and dull. His hair was jagged and uneven, clearly hacked away by someone with scissors and no skill. The front of his shirt was half wet, stuck with bits of cabbage and grains of rice. I could hardly believe that this was the same Patrick who once demanded perfection in every detail of his appearance. He stared back at me without blinking. In his eyes surged pain, sorrow, regret, despair. I steadied my breath and spoke. Angelo said he wanted to come see you, so I brought him. Angelo pulled out a bundle of cash from his backpack. Dad, this is my New Year's money. I want to give it to you, he said earnestly. Give it to him for what? In the end, he still depends on me. Sophia walked in with a cold sneer, snatched the money from Angelo's hands, and quickly counted it. 20,000? She glanced at me, her voice sharp and bitter. Isn't that a bit stingy? He left you over 20 million. I looked at her calmly. What about the 5 million he gave you back then? Didn't he also buy you a house? Sophia snorted. That house? He only paid 20% down. He's lying there paralyzed. How could I possibly pay off a mortgage? I sold it and bought this place. At least it's somewhere to live. The leftover 800,000 I put in the bank. With the interest and the government's assistance, it barely covers our living expenses. Sandra, considering he's the father of your child, don't you think it's time you gave a little back? I laughed. Didn't you just say you had enough to live on? Didn't you proudly claim money was the one thing you never cared about? Now that you're broke, you come begging. But tell me, if I were the one down and out, would you two give me even a cent? I turned then, looking at Patrick, who was silently crying, and spoke calmly. Back then, you swore over the phone to remain celibate for love, and you've done it. In fact, you'll be celibate for life. You admired Sophia for her unwavering care for her disabled husband, and now, you've got the exact same treatment. Patrick, you got what you wanted. So what exactly are you crying about? Patrick began to tremble. Long, guttural sobs escaped from his mouth. I took Angelo's hand and walked away without looking back. The car sped down the main road. I was quiet for a while before asking Angelo, "Do you blame Mommy for how I treated Daddy?" Angelo shook his head. No. Our teacher says, once you place a stone, don't regret it. Before you move, you must be clear, otherwise, a single wrong step and the whole board is lost. I exhaled slowly. Then a thought struck me, and I asked nervously, "Son, when you grow up, don't become one of those love-obsessed CEOs, okay? Cheating is awful." I didn't know why, but I had a feeling he had potential in that direction. Angelo looked puzzled. Why would anyone cheat? I was momentarily speechless, unsure how to explain. Angelo, ever perceptive, made the connection himself. I get it, like Dad, right? Don't worry, Mom. I'm the one who holds the board. Holds the board? I didn't quite understand. Angelo's voice was calm and firm. The player who holds the board must take responsibility for every move. Once a stone is placed, it cannot be undone. I didn't fully understand, but I believed him. After all, my son, Angelo, is a master.